3 in a row, Rod. I'm not
Ooh.
sure I expected after that 5-0 start that we would ever have a three-game losing streak. But Bengals came in, and the Bengals kind of whooped them up. Like, I think the Vikings game was a little bit of an eye-opener just at how easily Cousins was able to move the football. I think most believe Joe Burrows is a better quarterback, and they just took whatever that Minnesota game plan was, and they just repeated it. And Joe Burrows looked tremendous. I know he has the calf thing. I didn't see any resemblance of a quarterback who had a calf problem. This dude was running. He looked fast. He's like shaking Hufanga out of his shoes. So, I think this loss is probably the most frustrating one because there was, after that first loss, you could say, okay, you're going to lose one at some point. And then last week you could say, a little fluky. You're going into Minnesota, you're playing on the road. We have all of these different excuses as to what's going on. Not too many excuses after this one. This was a pretty much a butt kicking, I thought. I mean, I know they made it close near the end, but they were never in control of this game. I don't think for 1 minute.
That was what I saw. And, we continue with this narrative of coordinators and whatnot. But what I saw was Bengals plastered on our defensive linemen and blowing them 3 yards off the ball. I saw Bengals players. I'll be really interested to see when the numbers come out, how many of those yards were after contact. There were hella missed tackles. We couldn't cover. We needed a blanket or something because we couldn't, we couldn't, and again, there's no shame in not being able to cover Jamar Chase. I mean, he's one of the best receivers in the league.
He looked like the best player in football.
But I don't know how you come away from watching that game and want to ascribe any of that to scheme. I mean, we just got our butts kicked. And again, because that's, to me, when you look at the offensive and defensive lines, you can talk about scheme and leverage and all the rest of that. But at a certain point, you just got to whoop the dude in front of you. And if you can't fundamentally, if they're whooping your ass, I hope you're not going over to the sideline hoping that the defensive coordinator has some kind of advice for you to keep this dude from beating your ass, because that's just not generally how it works. You just got to get mad and you have to fight. And I'm not saying they weren't, because I don't play that game, professional athletes. I believe they're all out there trying, and if they're getting their ass kicked, it's not because they want to get their ass kicked. Maybe them dudes are just better.
Yeah.
But
I have a buddy who's a Bengals fan,
mm-hmm.
and he said, here was his quote to me. I'll read it to you. Let me see if I can find it here. I know it's sitting in a Discord somewhere. Okay, here we go. He said, I don't know if the San Francisco defense is fraudulent, but this is the best the Bengals have looked this year. So is the defense fraudulent? Because coming into the season, I think we had high hopes. And I think part of the reason why you're okay with Brock as a young player starting is, you have playmakers on offense, but you also know you have playmakers on defense, and the defense keeps you in ball games, and Brock just has to do the little things to win. These last 2 weeks, Brock has had to try and play from behind, which is not, I mean, as we can tell so far in his career, not his strong suit, though I don't know if it's anybody's necessarily their strong suit this early in their career. But the defense today looked very average at best. And I have a statistic for you. 63 out of 77. That is the completion percentage, or the completions versus completion attempted for the last two games. That is 82%. Kirk Cousins and Joe Burrows have completed passes against 49ers secondary. 82% the last 2 weeks.
Look, it's really, I'm not a smart guy. So I have to keep it simple. And it's really simple to me. If we're able to get pressure, we can be a good defense. We can be a great defense. Because I am not one we're gonna throw out the first 5 weeks of the season. I just don't think so. I think we have to get pressure. And it seemed to me like, okay, we really didn't talk about it last week, but okay, we've all established that the zero blitz was a bad call. Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine. Everybody makes bad calls. Kyle makes bad calls. Everybody makes bad calls. But today, what I saw was an extreme overcorrection. So we're not going to blitz at
I
all.
was going to ask you about that.
So we're not. We clearly can't get consistent pressure. Nick was able to do a little bit, and Armstead did some stuff, but down in and down out, we aren't winning with 4. So one of Wilkes' strengths is his aggressiveness and calling blitzes. But it seemed like, he got his hand slapped and he sat in the corner and he wasn't allowed to do any of that today. Which, I mean, if you're not going to do it today, I don't know when exactly you're going to ever call another blitz if today wasn't. And again, maybe they just felt they couldn't cover these dudes man to man, so they couldn't afford to blitz. And if that was their assessment, I can't really, I can't fault them on that because it didn't seem like we had anybody out there who could cover any of those dudes one-on-one. But sitting back in the zone and trying to let the front 4 get there, that wasn't working either.
No.
So I would rather, I'd rather be aggressive and die that way.
And here's a psychological thing too, right? If you blitz and Burrows picks it up and makes the right decision and moves the ball downfield, you kind of go, okay, like he beat us on that play. But if you don't blitz and he does the same exact thing, you're kind of playing into his hands. But okay, here. I'm so happy that you brought this up, and we didn't even talk about this, but it was an angle where I wanted to go. So during the week, Shanahan was asked about the Wilkes blitz call from Monday, the zero blitz. Now, I don't know if he's throwing this guy under the bus, but he was very straightforward with his language. Here's the quote. Kyle Shanahan, quote, "He knows he messed up on that call. I have no problem with zero blitzes, especially when people need a lot of yards. If you need to get 20 yards to kick a field goal, I have no problem with the zero blitz, but I do when there's 16 seconds left. That's where he lost track. There was no necessary need for that just because of the time. I have no problem with that play call, but when it's that time, you can't do that. That's not an option." When has he ever called a coach out like that? From as far as I can remember, like never, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. And again, I go back to if that is the case, he's a first-year coordinator here. And this is another thing I spent all week talking about, is that dude came in and he is running Kyle's defense. He had to come in. They made it clear, and he made it clear. He had to come in here and learn how we did it here.
Yes.
And sprinkle in a little bit of some of his flavor, but this is their doing. So what you're telling me, Kyle, is if he can't do that, you're saying that you guys went over that specific situation and you instructed him under no circumstances can he do that. If not, I don't know how you can. I mean, I don't know. It wasn't it seems to me like we're playing the result, because if Mooney makes a play on that call, I mean, are we really talking about the fact that he called that? I don't know. Maybe Kyle does still say that in the press conference, that there's no way he should call that play and he got lucky. I don't know. But yeah, that was interesting. He was very strong in his criticism of him on that call. And I don't know if it was necessarily warranted. In my opinion, it wasn't necessarily warranted.
To be fair,
we weren't getting any pressure any other way. So
To be fair to Kyle, he also said, quote, "It's ultimately up to me. I heard that play call and I should have called the timeout and changed it, but I didn't. So that's what happens. But things lead up to that." And that part of the quote, now, every time the Niners have a defensive timeout, I'm just going to think he's changing Wilkes' play call.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an unfortunate circumstance that when we get to that place. But again, maybe I just don't know enough about it. But from what I see out there on the field, I think that there are far greater. I what I am not seeing is defensive linemen beating their opponents. I'm not seeing dudes making tackles, and I'm not seeing guys covering. And then I fall back to, wow, these dudes are playing excellent football, and it must be these calls that are putting them in these poor positions. I just don't see that. And so that's where I'm at with it. I just think, maybe he could give them a greater edge with his calls, but I also think somebody other than Bosa needs to get some kind of pressure at some point. We need to get that part figured out, and we need to get the back end. Which again, I've always said that those two things are connected. Going back to Salah and Ryan's, if we didn't get pressure, we get cooked. Their defensive got cooked too. Their secondaries got cooked too. This defense is predicated on pressure, and if we're not getting it, it's going to be a problem. And I think that is the greatest issue: is where's Hargraves? Where is Drake? I don't know. I don't even know if he's playing. Randy Gregory was supposed to be this great big grand addition. None of those dudes are being productive at all. Nick is still doing Nick kind of things, but there's nobody else helping him. So, I mean, it's that I think is what we need to fix. And if they think that they can bring somebody in here, because again, people talk about this Patrick Surtain foolishness. I don't really know why
Denver already said he's off limits.
Why would they do that? Even if they're in the mid, if they decided after this year Russell Wilson is a bust and we're gonna eat that money and we're gonna tear it down.
They beat the bumps off the Chiefs today.
I know that was shocking. But even if you decide you're gonna tear it down and start over, I mean, a 23-year-old all-pro corner on a rookie deal is going to be a cornerstone of a rebuild. So that doesn't make any sense. And then you drop down to somebody like the kid in Chicago. I mean, would he be an upgrade over what we have? Maybe, but I don't see him being like a difference maker. I mean, like somebody that's going to turn the season around. I just don't, any of those guys we go around, either they're going to be too expensive to get, somebody like Burns, or you question whether or not, I mean, Danielle Hunter, yes, I guess he's an upgrade over what we've got, but I mean, is he a difference maker? I don't know. I think Burns probably is, but how much does that cost? I mean, are we giving up? Or are we in the business of shipping 2 or 3 ones out the door to make that happen? I just don't know. I don't know. And if you do that, if you mortgage the future like that, do you really think that he's going to give you that kind of return? I mean, I guess I just, and then you start talking about guys like Chase Young okay, that would, again, they're good players and they're probably going to be, he's definitely an upgrade over Cleveland Farrell. But again, I don't know how high the bar is lifted by any of those moves. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. Most of the time, the NFL trade deadline end up being a bunch of nothing.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But I know we're not getting any help on the right side of the offensive line, which continues to be an issue. So I don't know. I just think we're gonna have to make it work with the guys that we've got. So We'll see.
First, wanted to shout out Rick. He didn't get to see today's game, so we're going to be a little bit of his eyes and ears on this one. Also, Davis in the chat as well. If you guys who are on the YouTube feed can just do a little, click that little thumbs up button. I was told that helps with the algorithm and all that stuff. So I don't know if it does or doesn't, but I guess it couldn't hurt. Okay, so we I guess the thing that I keep in the back of my head thinking of is obviously when you're on the top, when you're the top dog, when you're 5-0, there's only one place you can, you can only go down. Like everyone is looking at you and go, okay, how can we stop those guys? All of a sudden, weeks out, it's like, okay, we need to figure out what to do against these guys. Defensively for the 49ers, it looks like there are a couple of things that are being targeted, that are being taken advantage of. One of them is Isaiah Oliver in coverage. When teams can get one-on-one with him, they're just going after him. And there were moments where like Jamar Chase and him were hanging out one-on-one. It's like Jamar Chase and Mooney Ward also Mooney got called for pass interference, but Oliver's not. He's going to be the one who gets picked on in that situation. That's just kind of what it is. Now, we're being fair here, he also made some tremendous open field tackles on plays that could have been big gainers for Cincinnati. So I want to give him his kudos there. But his job is in coverage. I also think the one thing that I haven't heard a ton about, but when we mentioned not getting pressure, our safeties are built to help make tackles and stop the run. They're not, they're not these fleet of foot guys who are going to cover all kinds of areas of the field. Hufanga, for the first time, looks like what his negative attributes were coming out of college, which was his foot speed. One-on-one, this guy is getting juked out of his shoes on tackles. Now, I don't know if that is because usually if the defense is playing solid, there's going to be a linebacker there to kind of force him into Hufanga. But there were a few moments today where it was him and the ball carrier, and the ball carrier didn't get touched.
Whiff. He just whiffed.
Big time. So there are small things like that where if I understood maybe the X's and O's and the strategy for their defense a little bit better, I could probably give you a better explanation as to why maybe Hufanga and Gibson aren't really there to make plays or cannot make plays and do what they do best. There was a great opportunity, and I sort of was like, okay, this is what we need on that fumble that was turned into an incompletion, and Gibson was right there and he picked it up, and I was like, okay, like positive play for the defense, but it was called what I thought correctly was an incompletion, and then that stopped that drive, and it was 4th down. The linebacker situation, it sounds like poor Dre is not doing well. I heard from, or I read a couple of things where people who were at the game were watching him get up after trying to make tackles, and it's saying like every single time he was it was really slow for him to get up. So he's hurting, and he's going to be happy that the bye is here. All of a sudden your all world middle linebacker, the field is wide open, and Joe Burrows is running in the middle for quarterback draws. And that is because Fred's got to cover so much more space when things are spreading out. So the offenses are figuring out the pockets of the 49ers defense that aren't great when you can block. So I think all of those things are part of this. And I would hesitate to say all of a sudden the Niners went from, a really strong defense to a really crappy defense in a short frame of time. But it does look like teams were like, okay, like, what do we do against these guys? Well, we need to try and do these things. And then when you can't get when you can't get any pressure from the front four, it looks like those things that they're doing are working now. So Wilkes is going to be a bit of a scapegoat for the fans. Last week, it was Moody, right? It was Moody and Wilkes um, and now Wilk. So I don't know what the exact formula. I don't know what the antidote is. I'm sure the bye week is going to help these guys, but I think ultimately, there seems to be a little bit of chaos on Kyle's staff as far as what's going on. They'll have to figure out that they'll have to shape that up because I very much agree with you that it looked like an overcorrection to last week and what they did this week. So let's turn to the offensive side of the football, and for the second week in a row, our guy CMC did not have that many carries, and some of that was the Niners were behind pretty much from Jump Street. They got the kickoff, they punted, Cincinnati came down, scored immediately. Not to say that this offense that was averaging 30 points a game needs to all of a sudden become run dominant, especially with Trent out, but do you want to see CMC have more than 12 carries in a game where he was averaging, let me see, what was he averaging? He
Four
was
and a half.
4.5 yards per carry.
I mean, I just think it based on just the way this offense is set up, you have to be able to give Brock a play action option. I mean, and again, now we're on an offense. I mean, I know what the fan base is going to do. Like you say, it's going to be some combination of Wilkes and Shanahan and Moody and the refs, and it's never going to be Brock and his 3 turnovers. That's never going to come up. It's just not. We'll talk about the 365 yards, and that's great. But
you know what? I'm going to slightly disagree with you there. I do
Mhm.
think there's a pocket of fans who dislike the rah Brock stuff a little bit.
Okay.
Not and I might be in that pocket of fans. I want Brock to be the best thing since sliced Wonder Bread. Like that's how good I want him to play. But when I watch him and you see these second year mistakes that he's making where these linebackers are kind of suckering him into making these throws, and you go, damn, that looks a lot like Jimmy G. But then in my mind, I got to go, okay, this is his second season. They are, he's coming back. Some of this stuff he didn't really have to do a lot last year because they were ahead in all these games, and now we're asking him to do something that we didn't really ask him to do. And I don't think Kyle probably wished that he would have to do a lot of, which is bail this offense out or bail the defense out because the defense is playing poorly. We talked about this when we were trying to make comparisons. You were like, well, maybe he's the same size as Drew Brees, but Drew Brees is throwing 50 times a game.
Mm-hmm.
And if Brock has to throw 50 times a game, that is not what we want out of him.
That's what we want from him.
So,
and again, he even I don't know, even the last 2 weeks, really, he hadn't really played. He played pretty good. I mean, until he didn't. I mean, it really. I mean, this wasn't, on the scale of if you go from excellent to awful. It definitely wasn't awful, and it definitely wasn't excellent. It was somewhere in there. I don't think Brock lost us the game by any stretch of the imagination, but there were times that I thought that we had I thought we had an opportunity to come back, but he he gave them back the ball, and again, the fact of the matter is we couldn't stop him. So that was the overarching issue. But I thought that especially in the second and third quarters, we did a much better job of moving the ball, which kept them off the field, if nothing else. So it would have been nice to convert some of those drives into points. Again, twice in the red zone with nothing to show for it hurts. I mean, we have to, if you turn those into points, even into 6 points, it changes the complexion of the game. When you look at the final score, you don't think 6 points matters, but it just changes the way everything else subsequently plays out, I believe. So we just have to be more efficient. And again, you talk about if you want to talk, you want to make a Jimmy comparison. It's the red zone. It's always the red zone. You got to be that, and that's something that Brock has been really good at is cashing. When we get inside the red zone, he's been really effective at cashing until the last 2 weeks, and I don't know if that's him or if it's the what the defense is doing or some combination of the two. It's probably never just one thing. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how we move forward because again, it seems like again we got here differently, but again we are 8 weeks in and we are kind of in flux again. It wasn't it wasn't a 2-3 start that got us here. It was a 5-0 start, and then all of a sudden we find ourselves at 5. So it looks different, numbers wise, but again, 8 weeks in, we're kind of in the same spot we were in last season. We were 8 weeks in last year. We were 1 week of CMC. We'd gotten our ass kicked by the Chiefs, and
this game was a little bit reminiscent of that early, I thought.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like where I'm not punting on the season because I've seen this too many times with Kyle Shanahan teams where they somehow figure it out and we go on this massive run. I mean, this year, fortunately, we don't have to win what was it, 12 or 10 or 12 straight to end the season. We don't necessarily need that kind of run, but it would be nice to, again, as we said in our preseason workup, it'd be nice. We want to be playing our best football. I don't care about being the best team in September. I would much rather be playing our best football in January.
Yeah.
And I mean, and that's still all of that's still out in front of us. We are perfectly capable of look at, if you look at other teams, the Cowboys seem to have found something today. After they were, truck sticking people early and then we whooped them and then they kind of lost their way. They kind of righted the ship today. So I'm not concerned that our overarching goal is not still in reach. I still think we can be a team that is to be heard from in late January. But we gotta get it figured out.
All right. So Davis, this is what I also want to ask you this. Davis says, he's not sure Brock is the future, but he's the best option for the present. But he knew teams would figure him out better this year with last season's tape. I think that is fair. That is, I don't know if Brock is the future or not. You'd have to, maybe get a couple drinks into Kyle and have a candid, conversation with him to know that. But they did move off of somebody who they traded 3 number 1 draft picks for in order to basically prop Brock up as the number 1. So he had that much faith in doing it. And I do think, if I think back into previous iterations of great 49er quarterback play, they flashed a little thing on the screen today, which said first 12 games and the records of those QBs in the first 12 games. Steve Young, I think they said Steve Young was 8-4 in his first 12 starts. And if you remember, Steve Young would have these tremendous drives, and then he would have like a bonehead play that the fans would just go crazy about because, this is why, it should be Joe and not Steve. And that was kind of that those moments kind of followed him until they won the Super Bowl. So I can't say that, Brock with the turnovers in these last 3 games, all of a sudden is not the guy, because you need if the defenses are figuring out Brock, then you need to give Brock the opportunity to then be one step ahead of the defenses and start doing other things to not get suckered into those plays. Like there was a play where Tony Romo, and this is why I like watching Tony Romo games, even though he can be kind of annoying sometimes. There was the touchdown play, the touchdown pass to McCaffrey. So McCaffrey runs like a little short slant into the end zone. And I thought he was open on that play. And I was like, throw it, throw it. And then Brock rolls out a little bit. And then he finally throws it. McCaffrey scores a touchdown. Well, and Tony Romo, what he showed was that there was a middle defender who was eyeing Brock to make that throw. And so what Brock did is he looked the other way, which made that guy move. And then he went back to CMC. So those are moments that you go, okay, like that's actual, he's moving the defense in a play like that. And then there are going to be some times where the linebacker suckers him into making a throw. And so you would hope that if Brock's going to be the guy, he's going to figure out how to win most of those situations. But someone who is fantastic at something like that, Aaron Rodgers, and he can throw the ball in a rope like he can, he still throws picks too. And sometimes he throws them in inopportune times, especially against the 49ers in the playoffs. Like that was,
So, and again, that's a thing where, you can be in his predecessor, Brett Favre. You can be too enamored with your talent, and you can try things that mortals don't try because you believe, Brett Favre there was never a throw on the field Brett Favre didn't believe he could make. And a lot of times he did, but also, you have to live with 5 pick games to get those 5 touchdown games. That was just the deal that you made. And it was interesting to see that as his career got to, whatever it was, year 20, and he was one of the most effective runners of the West Coast offense ever. And you would have never imagined he would be that type of operator if you saw him earlier in his career. So I do believe, I make that analogy because I do believe there's growth for Brock. But I am 100% with Drip, and that's what I've been saying, is that, yes, I believe that with this iteration of players, if we can get Debo back out there, we can get Trent back out there, I believe that Brock can win a championship with this team. I think I've seen enough of him to believe that. The question for Brock I've always had is, when the time comes 2 years from now, when it's the time is deciding, do you give this guy $50 million? That's going to be the question, because guess what? You're not going to be able to pay him $50 million and then have an all-pro selection of talent around him. You're not going to be able to have that. I personally, sitting here right now, I do not want to be in the $50 million Brock Purdy quarterback business. But, again, number one, we're not there today. Number two, we'll see. He's got 2 years to help make that decision for us. But I firmly believe that if we're able to get, I think we talked about this in the preseason, he's one of the players we could least afford to lose.
Yeah.
because while Moore has been decent, he ain't Trent Williams. And then Debo, I think his loss is we got a little Elijah Mitchell today, but it doesn't seem to me that Kyle is thrilled to have to give anybody in the backfield other than Christian McCaffrey the ball. Yeah. And he does feel comfortable if he needs to give Christian a rest or he wants to get a different look, that he can put Debo back there, and it's the same difference, basically. He is a guy who can make plays from back there, either as a receiver or as a ball carrier. He's just a difference maker. Yeah. I think what we're learning is Elijah Mitchell and those other dudes, they're nice players. But, you talk about like NBA is ramping up, and you talk about how they talk about there and how in the playoffs how the bench tightens up. Well, I think when the games tighten up, Kyle, there's like on his play sheet, there are like 4 guys that he's comfortable getting the ball to, and Elijah Mitchell and JP and TDP aren't them dudes. I mean, he wants to get it to Kittle, he wants to get it to IU, Debo.
I want to ask you about a play call here in a second, but
Mm-hmm.
my prediction for the trade deadline is that the Niners go after a receiver, because what Debo's loss has shown me is Jennings is very much one-dimensional, but he is one-dimensional in a way where if you can spread out the field and he's the guy who the defense cares about the least, he's great because he's tall, he's got hands, he's gonna make a tough
He's a
catch.
matchup nightmare for corners.
But when he is actually spied upon, he doesn't have the speed to get away from anybody. And on the flip side, Ray is great when you can sprinkle him in and you can kind of hide him, and all of a sudden he breaks out on a jet sweep or he takes a screen. Great.
He's a gadget guy. He's a gadget guy.
When he has eyeballs on him, he is a one-dimensional kind of player. So that is what Debo's injury, I think, has exposed in the 49ers wide receiver depth. I think if they go anywhere and trade for somebody, I think it's going to be somebody who they think is a little bit more of a well-rounded receiver, just in case something like this happens again, which isn't great news for someone like Danny Gray, who can't even get on the field,
or Ronnie Bell,
who I wish they would give him a little bit of a shot, because I think he has some of those explosive abilities that they like. But we know Kyle's hard on rookies.
I mean, it's just, that's what I think. It's definitely with him, we've seen enough to see it's not a skill thing. So it's got to be the fact that either he doesn't know all of his responsibilities well, or he's just not confident that he can go out there and make plays in the run game, which is important. I hear people say, so you're not going to put a playmaker out there because he can't block. No, you're not. I mean, because receivers because what we are, everything that we do is based off of the run game. And we've seen it this season with CMC, that there have been times when IU and Jennings and even Ray have turned 6-yard gains into 30-yard gains, blocking downfield. And that, in my limited experience with football actually out there, that is something that you always saw with teams that went on to do great things, is that guys took pride in helping, getting downfield and blocking. It's just something that great teams do. And it's something that we do well. And so you're not going to have a guy out there who isn't as committed to that. It's just a core philosophy around here. And I've been saying for a long time, and maybe he's too long in the tooth, and I don't know if Tampa would even, I think that's where he is Tampa, is maybe Kyle gives Julio one more run. Is somebody who, because I'm looking, when you talk about somebody as a receiver, they've got to be somebody who could come in and you can plug in to the Kyle offense. It's not going to be this whole big lag time. And Julio knows this offense. I don't know how much he has left in the tank, but I think if you're right, it's going to be somebody with Kyle Shanahan offense connections. I just don't see it being somebody who comes in cold, because I just don't know how much of an impact, if you don't have any experience with this offense on. Oh, okay. All right. Well, I guess that's out. Thanks.
Rick let us know that Julio signed with the Eagles. I was trying to figure out. I was like, I've heard his name recently.
Yeah,
What
I
happened?
thought it was the Bucks, but yeah, okay, the Eagles. So yeah, so that's a dead issue. That might have been a good signing for what you're talking about. But and offhand, I can't think of anybody else with any real Kyle connections or Kyle offensive connections that
What about
fit the bill.
there's a receiver in New England who scored a touchdown today who's got some 49er background to him.
Kendrick Bourne, huh?
Kendrick Bourne, I don't know. He may be a little too one-dimensional to be the guy that I thought, but he kind of fits a little bit into your mold. He would know some of the stuff that he would need to know to be able to pitch in. Rod also wondered about someone like Hunter Renfrow, who is kind of like a catches machine with the Raiders, but for whatever reason is not really playing much this year.
That wouldn't be. I mean, he definitely knows how to get. I mean, and he's a guy who, I've a little bit experienced with the Raiders. He's not gonna be scared to do the dirty work, and like you say, he's able to get open and he doesn't drop the ball. So I think he would be the type of player that would benefit greatly for playing with somebody like Brock. And he's wasting away all those receivers down there, wasting away. Hell, make a call for see what it takes to get Devontae.
And you know how you get Devontae. You tell him we're gonna sign Derek Carr next year. We're gonna bring him in. He's gonna battle. He's gonna compete with Brock for the QB1 spot. So we'll trade for you and make you happy. Because I don't think he's not happy if he went to the Raiders partially to play with his buddy, and then they are like, sorry.
Jimmy G. But I will say this: Jimmy G is like an all-pro when he's targeting Devontae Adams, but I think that has more to do with Devontae than it does Jimmy.
Oh yeah. Okay, here's the play that I was going to ask you about. Niners are moving the ball. They are, trying to come back in this game. They get into the red zone. The play call is RPO to Elijah Mitchell. Now, right out of the gate, doesn't look like either Brock or Elijah Mitchell are comfortable with this play.
Like they've never run it before.
Right.
Like it's the first time.
So Brock fakes the handoff. Elijah Mitchell runs a pass route that is sort of like he's running a sweep. And Brock is kind of just a couple yards behind him running the same pathway. And I think Brock is trying to get out far enough to where he can just kind of float it to Mitchell. And there's daylight there. But as Brock is trying to get out, he has to throw it a little bit early. And the defender was right there and just taps it in the air and then intercepts it. And I just thought, and this is kind of in, I was just thinking about it a little bit because of how Shanahan called Wilkes out. I wonder if Shanahan would take that play call back because neither guy looked comfortable running it. And it's not like it was CMC who would probably be the one to attract all the defenders on the play fake.
That definitely looked like a CMC.
Right.
Like when Kyle drew that up in his mind and on a whiteboard, that was with CMC in mind. It just looked like that would, it's a perfect CMC call. It was clear that though, like you say, I thought the same thing watching it. It was like, man, those dudes look like that's the first time they ever have run that play. And the fact that Elijah Mitchell was out all of training camp, it might have been. I don't, obviously I don't know what they did in practice this week, but they look super uncomfortable on that call.
And I was looking because they went right to the sidelines. And so you saw Shanahan as Brock was walking back toward the sidelines. And, when Shanahan wants to hide whatever he's screaming at, he kind of covers the mic with his hand. I don't know if that helps. Does that work?
Like LeBron.
Can you cover the mic with your hand and no sound gets into it because you're yelling at somebody? I think he's got to have a mute button on the same thing, right? What did you use the mute button? But anyway, I thought that was a poor play call in that instance. Now, if it works, then it's a great play call, but it didn't. So it kind of, you kind of can look at it that way. And this was a drive where they were using the play action to tremendous benefit. Kittle, Ayuk, just getting downfield, just no one around them making big plays. And so you're like, okay, and they're cooking now. They finally figured some things out, and then the turnover there comes at the most inopportune time if you're trying to come back and win the game. And then, I know that the other interception that he threw was, I think he just got suckered. But at that point, you're already down, and it's getting later in the game, so there's more urgency. And there's, when there's more urgency, some QBs are going to make more mistakes, as we saw with Jimmy G. And then the fumble at the end was, that game was over. But it did look like the play right before, where they called the roughing the passer for going below the knees, Brock did bang his head against the ground. And I'm guessing that nobody on the 49ers sideline actually saw that, or they would have probably got him out of there down by 14
at that point.
Yeah, third and whatever it was. So I hope that Brock didn't get dinged up more from that hit than because then the next play was the fumble. So,
but your point leads me to the fact that something I wanted to mention was that we did see a little bit more RPO than we've seen at any other point in the season with Brock. And again, I just think there's money there. But again, as I think we sussed it out earlier in the season that you really don't want this dude taking shots. But I just think, I don't know. I think especially as the games get more higher leverage and there's more to win. And again, maybe it's not worth it in October, but I just think as the games get tight, I think that there's money there. I think the dude can run it. I think he's athletic enough to where he can make plays, and there are enough playmakers out there where you put these dudes in binds where they can't cover it all. And I think there were several times today where Brock, the running lanes were like wide open.
I mean, we've been calling for this all season long.
Yeah. So it was good to see, he got like 60 yards today rushing, and was like, he averaged like it was 9.5 per rush. There's that.
He and Burrows were the two top rushers of the game.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. Mixon had 87, but yeah, the two average carry. Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, that is, I think as we move forward, I think that's something that we will see more. And I don't know, there's no way to know how something like thinking that, Darnold might have to play, and who knows what he saw from him. But maybe, I don't know, if you believe that dude is not going to kill you, maybe you can be a little bit more less risk averse with Brock. And again, I don't think you ever want to put him in harm's way, because I believe he gives us our best chance to win.
The broadcast said specifically about the concussion that he started to get ill on the flight home from Minnesota, and then the next day he felt fine. So, concussions, as I said on the preview pod that I did this for this morning, concussions are so different in how folks react to them, the severity. I think we don't call anything necessarily a minor concussion anymore, as a way to just make sure that concussions are never stigmatized as something lesser than dangerous. But it does sound like he had, a one that was not going to give him much trouble. But then what the one thing that we do know is when you get hit in the head, in a short time span, that could actually
more susceptible to the second one than, so like you say, it bears watching. I didn't notice what you noticed on him hitting his head, but that is something that bears watching, because if he ends up in the concussion protocol again this week, I can guarantee you, as we saw from the Tua situation last year, he's not going to play next week. If he ends up in there back in a week. I just don't think. Well, we got to
We
buy
got to
though, so
buy.
it might. Yeah, so that's not even that's not even an issue at this point. So yeah, it would give him. He has effectively 2 weeks um to recover. So yeah, that's a good break for us.
All right. So just a couple more things. Just wanted to shout out Shelvin as always for hanging out. Shelvin said that he thought that he saw that Kendrick came out of the New England game today. So I didn't see that. So we'll have to something to watch. And then Davis had a question that I thought was pretty interesting, and it's something that you kind of want to think about, which is you have all of these options, and Kyle obviously is a very creative play caller, especially to get guys open in space. And, I thought the play action was there last week or last game on Monday, and they didn't really go to it that much. And then Davis wanted to see more RPO stuff today. And he just said, is there too many play options, even with Debo out? That my answer to that, without being that knowledgeable about how to call an NFL offense. I think play callers are so much more comfortable when they just have their guys. And if in the back of your mind you're like, okay, Trent's not here, and Trent's replacement, you're just thinking about, can we do this? Is the risk too big to run this play, knowing what we need out of the tackle here, knowing what we need out of Debo's spot? Can we win this thing too? So I'm sure when Debo is back and when Trent is back, Kyle's going to go back into the bag. Some of that stuff today, I thought was, he sees something in the Bengals defense that he can take advantage of and give them some options. So, but ultimately, like I don't know the answer to Davis's question about if do you just have too many things that you can do, and sometimes you just want to. You just want to run out of a two-back set. We saw a little bit of Mitchell and McCaffrey together in the game, which I thought was weird. I was like, wait, is Juszczyk hurt? Like, why are these two guys in the backfield together? So ultimately, my answer to Davis is I don't really know, but I thought it was an interesting question.
It is, and but what was, I don't know, I guess alarming is it's too strong, but I did take note of the fact that 27 of the 30 targets were amongst 3 players.
Yep.
And then the rushes, if you take out Brock's 6, which I don't really remember. I didn't make note of how many of those are really designed runs. But I mean, again, Christian McCaffrey is at about 70% of the rush attempts. If you take, again, subtracting Brock's, he had 12 of the 18. If you take Brock's attempts out. So I mean, a lot of the carries and targets are concentrated amongst the guys, the usual suspects, as I would call them. And it's only, obviously, I think you would think Debo's absence only makes that, even, it makes that even, it highlights it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't know, up prior to his injury, it was George was the one who was getting the short end of the stick on targets. But he led the team today. So again, that's a good thing that we have guys who can take up the slack, but it's just concentrated amongst those, the playmakers, amongst CMC, Ayuk, and Kittle. I mean, it doesn't seem like he's got a whole hell of a lot of faith in those other guys. And I think it is like you say. I mean, Ray made at least one really big play as a receiver, but like you outlined before in your case for bringing in another guy, he's really a gadget guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to be a guy that when you go 3 wides that you're kind of just lining him up and expecting him to go out there and make plays. And like you say, that's not even Jennings is, he is best utilized when he's the third guy and you're getting, or fourth guy really, when you've got, Kittle, you got, when you are fully staffed, and basically he's going to be out there, he's going to be the odd man out, and he's going to have single coverage, and generally, like third and Juwan, he is going to be able to beat any corner that they have out there just physically, as a post up.
And he's gonna rub their face in the dirt at the same time.
Yeah,
after he blocks somebody into the ground.
That's great, but like you say, if you put him in a situation where he's now wide receiver 2, or why, it's a different, like you say, he's just not fast enough to be as effective. So that's not the craziest thing I've heard. If you could find, a qualified receiver, it's not going to cost a whole hell of a lot of money.
Yeah,
that would be not a whole hell, but a whole hell of a lot of draft cap, because nobody's really going to cost a whole hell of a lot of money at this point. You're only paying for half a season, unless they've got a longer contract. But I think I do believe that we're at this point. They've got all this money. I think that they're not going to I don't believe they will let money be the reason, because I think they cleared up that money because I think they understand that these windows are short, and anything you can do to extend them, if you're in a position where you're this close and you think that there's a player that can make a difference this season, I think you have to kind of go all in. There was conversation online today somebody talking about not agreeing with the F them picks efficacy of the Rams. But you know what, man? I just believe that championships, especially in the NFL, are so hard to get.
Yeah.
If you think you really do have to push your chips all in, because ultimately, what does it matter if you are a good team? You're a 10-7 team for 8 years in a row, 5 years in a row. If you're not really, you're a good team, but you're really not, in the mix to be playing in February. I mean, I guess that's fine, but at a certain point, this team is, I think all of them are here. These players, this coaching staff, this front office, they're going to be measured on how many championships they win.
I wish Jed had a little bit of Uncle Eddie in him, because Jed did open up the checkbook to turn some of these future bonuses into current bonuses, which opened up
this window up for
the cap space. And if this was Uncle Eddie, this is partially why Bill Walsh retired so early. He's sick of getting yelled at by Eddie DeBartolo.
Yeah.
And Kyle, there should be a little bit of pressure on Kyle. I'm sure he's feeling it. And Kyle's a little bit of an alpha kind of personality himself. But if I'm Jed, I'm pretty dissatisfied about how they've played the last 3 weeks, considering all the money that he has put into the team. So,
but I believe, like you say, I have not always got the feeling that money has not been an object with this team, and that like Eddie would do whatever. And again, I know that it's we're dealing with a salary, but we've seen it. You can massage this if you want to put the cash up. You can massage the salary cap.
Yeah.
But Eddie was all about going to get the newest and shiniest toy. If
Eddie's backups made more money than a lot of other teams' starters.
If Kevin Green was out there, if Tim Harris was out there, if Jim Burt was out there, he would go and he would spend the money to, like you say, have a fully stocked and fortified. Like you say, his backups were as highly paid as some starters around the league. So that is just, it's not really how we've operated around here. Like, if you don't have to look any further than our offensive line, where we're you stitching it together. Okay, if you decide you're not going to play McClinchy, that's fine. But you're paying like $1.7 million to McKivitz. I mean, you at a certain point, you kind of get what you pay for. It's just it's frustrating to have those kind of glaring weaknesses when you've got a team as good in the skill position places that we're trying to I kind of chintz and pinch pennies in places like, again, we spent the money on Moody, but nobody else is really getting paid in the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't know. It's just at a certain point, I think those weaknesses will come back to bite us. We definitely need another corner. I just don't know that at this point in time, if you're going to be able to get somebody that makes a significant difference there. And I don't like to be the revisionist, but I don't know. Can you get a better corner or a better offensive lineman in the third round, and you get, who is it? Dallas has the soccer dude who's booming 58-yard kicks, and he wasn't drafted. So I mean, I don't, I'm not trying to revisit, I'm not shoehorning revisiting Moody there, but again, it's just every decision that you make has ramifications at other places when
Yeah.
you're building a roster. And again, we just have, for a team that's this good, there are just significant holes here. And again, there was deodorant put on when we go 5-0, but when you lose 3 in a row, everything
You have
gets
to take a
a
shower,
magnet.
man.
Yeah, everybody, there's magnifiers put on everybody. So we'll see.
All right, so we'll end this. We kind of do the player of the week. I think you could make a case for Kittle, who had a big game. He had one drop
Mm-hmm.
on, I think it was on a third down, but otherwise he looked fast. He looked spry. He looked like, the Kittle who from a few years ago, who was like not only one of the best tight ends, but one of the best, receivers and yards after the catch guys in the league. He looked like that again today. And Ayuk as well. He had the one drop
Mm-hmm.
where he kind of slid, and I couldn't tell if he lost the ball in the sun or it snuck up on him. I don't think Brock fired it in any harder than he usually does, but the ball just bounced off of his face mask. That was really the only bad play for him. I think you go with both guys, and CMC gets the 2 scores like always. He's
Mm-hmm.
he's the touchdown vulture on this team. But I don't think there was anybody else who I saw that would even qualify of being, a player of the week. Those would be the 3 that I thought stood out.
Well, I just like this dude, and I thought that he had a really good game. Armstead, he had the 2
Armstead
sacks,
did.
2 tackle for losses, 2 quarterback hits. And he was just really disruptive on a day where I was watching the defensive line, and it was really just him and Bosa. I mean, my man,
They were working well together in tandem.
the $84 million man was like a no-show. And it's been that way for the past several weeks. I mean, he's not Hargrave, I'm talking about, has just
Yeah.
not, he has not made any kind of impact at all. And it's just troubling. He has to, when you have invested, and again, I'm not doing that thing that people have been doing with Nick, that been nitpicking because he got paid. It's just the fact that when you invest those resources there, he basically was expected to replace the production of Ebukam and Amenahue, and he just hasn't.
Mhm.
When he is a goose egg, it just really, it hurts. You really need that production from him, and I don't know what they have to do schematically to to free him up. Again, but talking like that completely is the antithesis of how I believe. I just believe this dude needs to go out there and win. I mean, that's what you pay him for, is to go out there and make plays. And he just hasn't the past 2 weeks in particular. I've been watching, and he is a big goose egg in the stat sheet. And that's a problem. That's a huge problem.
Yeah.
So moving forward, hopefully we can figure out a way. I don't know. I know in Philly, they played him outside some to try to get him going. I don't know what it is that we have to do, but that's one place that I look at and see that we could definitely stand for a whole lot of more production. I'm looking at the stat sheet now, and Hufanga had like 10 tackles, but that's like fool's gold to me.
Yeah.
There were some plays where he looked bad. He looked really bad. And that's a problem. So again, we could talk about, the DC, but I just think our players just need to do a better job of making plays. So we'll see as we come out of the bye week. Maybe we get refreshed, and I don't know, maybe they make an addition. I just doubt it. I don't really see anybody out there that's gonna be like a huge needle mover that you really are going to be willing to give up significant. I think, well, I say it like this: anybody who would make a huge difference is going to take significant draft capital to acquire. I just don't think you're going to be able to throw, Carolina a fifth for Brian Burns. I just don't see. So we'll see. We get to lick our wounds, and hopefully we come back and we have a fresher outlook on the other half of the bye.
All right. So if the Niners make a trade in this at the trade deadline, maybe Rod and I can get back together and do like a quick, probably not a live stream, but just do a short video and the audio podcast so we could talk about it. But otherwise, I think we're going to take the week off next week because, after losing 3 games in a row, we might have to recharge our battery.
Exactly.
So we'll do, if there's a trade, we'll do like a midweek thing and then a shorter show, and then we'll have next Sunday off. I think everybody's probably thankful that you have a Sunday where you don't have to sit in front of the TV for 8 hours, or maybe you're just like, no, that's what I want to do every week, and I'm going to do it anyways. I know Shelvin had some issues with the direct TV, or not the direct TV, but the Sunday ticket, the YouTube. He said that there was issues with the morning games today. So maybe that's what it is. It's just like, because I watch the Niners next week, I'm just going to watch all the other teams. That maybe that's what you do. But anyways, so we'll take a break, but we may come back during the week with a short show. And then later this week, Giants podcast, Thompson and Clark, and we'll have the Warriors as well, the death lineup. And I will jump in if need be on any stories, anything.
I'm loving you and Brian and the Warriors because this is just such a fascinating team to me. It is,
and I've stayed away from the score because I know they're playing right now, and I have it on recording. I don't know the score, but what I love to do when I watch basketball is I do the 10-second skip after every bucket and after every free throw. I eliminate free throws, I eliminate the time, and I can get through a basketball game in like an hour versus the 2.5 hours. And so after you and I are done, I'm going to go upstairs and I'm going to do my shadow boxing exercise while I'm watching a sped up version of and who knows, maybe I could catch up to real time though. But at this point, they're probably in the 4th quarter already, so maybe not. But I'm going to stay away from all my alerts so that I don't spoil myself. But hopefully they make me feel better because I didn't feel good watching this game. All right, that'll be it from here. Thank you to everyone who checked in with us and who was, who's riding with us during this season. Love all of you.
Go D-back, Sheldon.
Yes, they're 1-1. They got a shot here. The 84 win Arizona Diamondbacks in the World Series. Jeez. 84 wins.
And that's the only dog I have in the fight. I'm rooting for the D-backs because of Shelvin.
All right. Thank you to everybody. For Rod, I'm Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.